Good morning, everyone. Thank you to all of you that are here with us today, this morning. I'm Austin Mayor Kirk Watson, and please let's begin today with a moment of silence for Amy, Jennifer, Sarah, and Eliza, and for their dear families. Thank you all. Over 3 decades after a horrible crime took the lives of 4 teenage girls and changed Austin forever, our hearts haven't healed. They're still broken for the precious girls we lost. We've never stopped sending our love and our prayers to their families. As all of you know, the Austin police have announced that a significant breakthrough has been made in the yogurt shop murder case. The detectives today will outline the timeline and process of their investigation. Their investigation is thorough and relies on technology that was not available back then. This day has been a long time coming. More than a quarter century ago, in a circumstance much like this today, I said that Austin lost its innocence the night those young souls became victims. Today, we have some closure. We are different people in a different city. Time has passed. We have endured more, have been disappointed, and have felt defeated and devastated. But today, with the resilience needed to endure something this painful, recognizing the scars, the suffering, and while there's no change to the horror, no wiping away any of the wrongs, no diminishing the grief, we can finally express a deep sigh, a release that comes from knowing. Thanks to advancements in science, thanks to the relentlessness of our committed detectives who have lived and breathed this case for decades, thanks to the support of Austin Forensics, and thanks to an unwavering commitment by the City of Austin, today, finally, we have an answer. I'm joined today by our City Manager, T.C. Broadnax, and Deputy City Manager, John Fortune, and we will hear from Austin Chief of Police, Lisa Davis, Detective Dan Jackson, who has led this case since 2022, Dr. Dana Cottovy, Director of Austin Forensic Science Department, District Attorney Jose Garza, Mindy Monfort of the Texas Attorney General's Office, and finally, and most importantly, family members of the girls. Chief Davis.
Thank you, Mayor Watson. After 34 years, the Austin Police have made a significant breakthrough in this case. This is one of the most devastating and haunting cases in this city's history. This unthinkable crime has weighed heavily on the hearts and the minds of the family, the community, and the detectives who have tirelessly worked this case. As a mother, I cannot begin to imagine just the grief and the pain that you have endured. For the families of Amy, Eliza, Sarah, and Jennifer, today marks a critical step forward in honoring not only their memory, but getting at truth and accountability. We now have evidence linking a specific individual to this case, Robert Eugene Brashers. The only physical evidence located at that scene has been matched to him. Brashers died by suicide in 1999 after a standoff with police in Missouri. And his DNA has since been, and before this connection, he has been connected to murders and rapes across the country. I am grateful for the advancements in science and technology that have allowed us to uncover this critical evidence, identify Robert Eugene Brashers, and move closer to delivering long-awaited answers for the family and our community. While this is a major step, many questions remain. Our work is not over. The Austin Police will continue to work closely with the State Attorney General's Office, Travis County District Attorney's Office, the Forensic Science Director, Dr. Cottovy, and other partners to ensure this case continues to move forward responsibly and with integrity. I want to thank the men and women who have given countless hours across decades to this case. They have kept this case alive and in the memories of many here in Austin. Their commitment demonstrates the will to never give up and what it means to seek justice and to seek truth. And their work will have a ripple effect across this country when they assist with other investigations. At this time, I'd like to introduce Detective Dan Jackson, the lead investigator of this case. Dan, as the mayor said, started this case in 2022, and we are here today because of the work Dan has done on this case. Dan will now walk us through a timeline on the investigation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Daniel Jackson. I'm the lead detective, like she said, and I've been on the case since 2022. Before we get started, this case wouldn't be where it is today if there wasn't some recognition to everyone who helped me from different agencies across the country. So when I name you, if you wouldn't mind standing up so everyone could appreciate the work you've done over the last few years. But first, I'd like to thank the Texas Attorney General's Office Cold Case Unit, the Texas Rangers, DPS, y'all can stand, DNA Labs International, Signature Science, and our case management staff at our forensic division, the ATF, Missouri State Police, the Greenville, South Carolina Police Department, the Kentucky Police Department that I can't name specifically because they're still working on their case, but which we'll get into later, Steve Kramer and Steve Bush at Indago Solutions, Anne-Marie Schubert, Dr. Bruce Bedoli, and Dr. Colleen Fitzpatrick. Okay, so I'm going to walk you all through how we got to where we are today. I'll start with a brief overview of the history of the case, but what I'm not going to do is go into the details of that aspect of the investigation because it wasn't my investigation. And so I'm just going to kind of generalize and get you guys caught up to speed of how we got to where we are now, okay? So just sort of a historical picture of what this looked like in the days after the yogurt shop caught on fire. As you can see, it appears to be just, your everyday middle America retail space in a strip mall. Here's a diagram. It's a bird's eye view just of a sort of layout of the building if you're not familiar with this case. The customers would be there in the front, obviously, and then in the back is where the fire was started and the girls' bodies were discovered. Sarah, Eliza, and Jennifer were together, and Amy was a little bit closer to the front. So the gist of the MO of this case was the perpetrator entered or remained near closing time when no other customers were present. The girls were found nude and had been tied up with their own clothing as ligatures and bindings. There was evidence of sexual assault. All four had been shot in the head with a .22 caliber pistol, and Amy was also shot with a .380 pistol. And then the building was set on fire before the suspect left the scene. Remember, this is 1991. This is not 2025, so DNA technology is primitive at best, okay? But the detectives back then had the foresight to go ahead and collect what evidence they could and had swabs taken for possibly DNA testing or some sort of testing that maybe in the future. They did it both at the scene and at the autopsies, which turned out to really help us with the amount of DNA we were able to get later. Some of the only really physical evidence that was recovered was a spent .380 shell casing that was located in the floor drain. There were no .22 caliber casings recovered. And the fire and then the water from the fire department basically destroyed pretty much anything else that you were going to try to collect or try to process as a crime scene. Back then, they got thousands and thousands of tips that came in, a lot of, quote, confessions from different people, but it led to nowhere and no arrests were ever made. There was one confession from a juvenile named Maurice Pierce. 8 days after the murders, Pierce was at North Cross Mall, which is down the street from the yogurt shop, and he's with his friend named Forrest Wellburn. He was carrying a .22 pistol in his waistband. He was 16 at the time, and he was arrested for the possession of the pistol and taken down to the homicide office, where he was interrogated for several hours by Detective Hector Polanco. At the end of it, he confessed, and the next morning he spoke to the lead detective, Detective John Jones, as well. I'm not going to go into the details too much here, but basically Pierce confessed that he had lent the .22 to his friend Forrest, and Forrest claimed that he had killed the girls. When Forrest Wellburn was questioned, he mentioned that his two other friends, Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott, along with Pierce, had all gone to San Antonio the night after. Back then, the police interviewed all four, and they were eliminated as suspects. The ballistics on the .22, to see if it would try to match it with the fragments from the murder scene, were inconclusive at best. The projectiles are highly fragmented and distorted. I can tell you that is not an issue that has been overcome since with new technology. I had them looked at just a couple months ago, and still the ballistics expert was like, there's not much we can do because they're so fragmented. So then the case stalls over the next 5 years or so. The personnel gets scaled back. They had several task forces come and go. But in 1999, the new task force revisited this Maurice Pierce confession. And they go ahead and interrogate 4 subjects, the 4 from that had been originally interviewed back in 91 or early 92. Maurice Pierce, Forrest Wellburn, Robert Springsteen, and Michael Scott were reinterrogated several years later. During the interrogations, they were able to get confessions from Robert Springsteen and Michael Scott. They were not able to get confessions from Forrest Wellburn or Maurice Pierce at that time. All 4 subjects were arrested for capital murder in 1999. Forrest ended up being no-billed by the grand jury, and Pierce's charges were eventually dropped. Michael Scott and Robert Springsteen were put on trial separately. Both were found guilty, pretty much based on each other's confessions and implicating each other. Michael Scott received life without parole, and Robert Springsteen received the death penalty. There was never any physical evidence linking them to the yogurt shop. Of course, they go through the appeals process like any other murder trial. While they're on appeal, or while they're appealing their conviction, a landmark Supreme Court case comes out called Crawford v. Washington. It reformulated what hearsay statements can be admitted in criminal cases under the Sixth Amendment. Basically, you can't use someone else's written or videotaped confession against somebody else if they themselves are not taking the stand. You can't cross-examine a video. You can't cross-examine a written statement. And then, so that's what was used in their trials. The Texas Court of Criminal Appeal granted him a new trial for Springsteen and Scott. So in preparation for the new trial, the district attorney's office and the police department decided they needed to get some physical evidence to link them to the crime. By this time, DNA had come a long way, and we had a new technology called YSTR, YSTR testing. YSTR testing looks at genetic information on the male chromosome only, and they were able to get a profile from the asexual assault kit that had 16 markers, or 16 locations with genetic data on it, on the Y chromosome. The kit only tests for specific 16. All 4 of the original suspects were excluded from this profile. In 2009, the charges were dropped pending further investigation. Then over the next several years, hundreds of reference samples were collected for elimination or suspect profiles. First responders, family, friends, any potential suspects, associates. I think we tested 300 or 400 different people in this case over the years. So since 2008, they've tried numerous testing strategies, sent numerous things across to numerous labs. I think we've had 13 different labs over the last 20 years. The difficult part is most of the DNA that was collected is only a few picograms. So we're talking a few cells, and it's often a mixture with the victim. It's extremely difficult. In 2018, the unknown Y profile was resubmitted for retesting because there have been technological advancements. Now, upon further testing, the YSTR was expanded out to 27 markers, 27 genetic locations, or locations of genetic information for a more complete profile. It's 25 markers, but 2 of those have a double allele to give you 27 total. However, the identity of the profile remained unknown. But also about this time, we're starting to find this YSTR profile on other items taken from the girls, or other swabs. I inherited the case in June of 2022 and spent the first few months sort of reviewing it. But one of the first things I did was I met with a group of subject matter experts on DNA and genealogy, and we sat around a round table. They were having, some of them are here today, and they were here for a conference, so I was able to get them all in one room together. And we sort of went through the evidence. I wanted to know what I had and what I could do with it. And we kind of came up with a tiered system of best to worst things that we might be able to do something with. And that's where this all kind of hatched. Were tested, didn't have a whole lot of luck, but fast forward to late June of 2025. I was researching the spent 380 casing that was found on the floor drain to see where it was now and what we could maybe do with it, if anything, and just researching the chain of custody. I don't know what made me go down that rabbit hole that morning, but I did, and I'm glad I did. What I found was that it had not been submitted into the NIBIN system in many years. NIBIN is the National Integrated Ballistic Information Network. It's kind of like CODIS for shell casings. You can put it in there, and it'll tell you if it's linked to other shell casings and other crimes. It had been put in there a couple times, but it had been a long time. And so I spoke with the ATF guys here. A couple of them are here. Jonathan, you're here. And I asked him about it, and he said, well, whether it's in there or not, if it had been many years, resubmit it, because the software has gotten so much better. I mean, we're talking like 3D stuff now, so go ahead and do it. It's not going to hurt. And of note, and this is important later, the original ballistics report said that in all probability, the weapon used from that 380 projectile was limited to an AMT brand backup model 380 handgun that was used to kill Amy. So that's important later. The morning of July 2nd, the ATF sent the 380 cartridge, and that afternoon I was notified of a hit out of Kentucky, an unsolved murder out of Kentucky. So I can't name the name of the city. They haven't done their press release yet, but they know who they are, and they did a fantastic job. But myself, a couple others from the cold case unit, and Mindy Monford from the AG's office, we flew up to Kentucky to review our cases with their detectives. And the murders did share similar details. I can't go into those. But the preliminary NIBIN results indicate a presumptive positive correlation between the two casings, indicating the same gun was used in Yogurt Shop as it was several years. I'm not going to even tell you the date. Oh, it's up there, 98. So all the way to 1998. So when we traveled up there to Kentucky. I took the casing with me so we could do a one-to-one by a tool mark examiner for definitive comparison as required, just like if fingerprints and DNA, you still have to do the one-to-one to get it definitive. Results are pending. We should have those this week, but NIBIN has a crazy high accuracy record, and it's also gets peer reviewed before we even send it, so it's in all likelihood. But aside from the MO and the NIBIN hit, there were no obvious links between the two cases. So we kind of sat down and decided, well, what are we going to do next? How are we going to solve these cases together, assuming they are related? And we worked with them on a testing strategy of some items because their case had been cold and they hadn't been worked in quite a few years. So they had some items that could be submitted and retested, including the sexual assault kit. I reached out to their lab and asked them if they had a Y profile in their case, and they had not done one yet. So I requested that they go ahead and do one so we could compare it to our unknown Y and see if in fact we are talking about the same individual. That sort of gave me the idea of, can you also, while you're at it, manually check all your Y profiles in Kentucky and see if you have a profile from another case, another crime that matches ours. If this guy's from Kentucky, perhaps he's already in their database. This is not something it's automated search like CODIS. It has to be a manual search. Because we had tried this once before, nationally. Back in 2018 and into 2019, Dr. Cadavy had reached out to the different labs across the country who do YSTR testing and retain those profiles and asked if they could manually search against our unknown. They returned 0 profile matching. Nobody in the country, at least nobody, is about six labs or so returned information. Not a lot of labs were doing it back then. So I said, well, it's been a few years, more labs are doing this. Databases are getting a little bigger. Let's do a nationwide again. And so we reached out to all of the labs in the country that do YSTR typing and asked if they could manually search against our unknown profile. And we got a match. We got a hit. Only one. The South Carolina State Lab was the only lab in the country that responded that they had a match, quote match, to our unknown YSTR. All the others had no hits at that level. And I'm talking, this is at 27 to 27 markers. This is the full profile, and every allele was the same. So it took us a couple of weeks. The results were reviewed for accuracy, and their legal department reviewed it. It took those like the longest 2 weeks because we knew we had somebody, but they wouldn't tell us. So it was a long 2 weeks. The reason it took 2 weeks to review, I found out later, is because they wanted to make sure they were doing it right, because I was the first person to ever ask them for this. Nobody had requested a manual search against their database before. So they wanted to make sure that legally they were on the right footing and that there was no quality assurance issues. So on August 22nd, they sent me the information, and it was from a sexual assault and murder from 1990 out of Greenville, South Carolina. And this was the profile that they had, Robert Eugene Brashers. He has a perfect 27 for 27 match to our unknown profile in Yogurt Shop. I got on the phone with Greenville, South Carolina immediately, and we started conversations about our different cases, how they similar. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, he didn't know anything about the case. He didn't know what it was. And he said, your victims, were they bound with their own clothing? And the hair stood on the back of my neck. And I knew we were maybe getting somewhere finally with this case. And so I asked for some biological evidence to be sent to me so we could do a one-to-one comparison on the Y, and also to have population statistics done by Signature Science to see how rare this particular Y profile might be. Not all Ys are created equal. So this particular Y profile is very rare. They'd never really seen it before, and their population statistics estimated that it's only 0.12% of the U.S. population. So now we're getting somewhere that, we're building a case here that this is Brashers, but still 0.12%, we need to be at 100%, but we're getting there. He's starting to look better and better. Just real quickly, Mr. Brashers was arrested on December 12th, 1985, pled this second-degree homicide and aggravated battery. This is in Florida, where he made unwanted sexual advances towards a woman. She tried to leave, and he shot her multiple times. Thankfully, she survived and was able to give a description. He was arrested later that night. He was sentenced to 12 years in prison. However, he only did about 4, and was granted parole in May of 1989. After he died, Chief already went over some of his known cases, but after he died, basically DNA linked multiple unsolved murders and sexual assaults across the country to him. Between 2006 and 2017, they knew that they had a serial killer in these different jurisdictions, but they didn't know who he was. It wasn't until 2018, the very sort of infancy of genetic genealogy, that these detectives, some of them who are here today, got together and collaborated on how are we going to identify this guy. So they thought about doing genealogy, and they used Parabon Labs to send his DNA and build a profile, and then look for any relatives in the genealogical database. They found some distant relatives and sort of triangulated and sort of kind of built his family tree, and they said, this Brashers guy's got a violent history. You should probably get reference samples to see if it's him. So they reached out to his family. They were able to get a reference sample. The DNA showed this, yes, this is a close relative, probably a brother. So at that point, they got a judge's order to have him exhumed out of Arkansas, and they retrieved biological evidence from the body to develop a profile for CODIS. And in 2018, that DNA testing confirmed that all of those unsolved up there and were all from Mr. Robert Brashers. So he's good for the sexual assaults and murders throughout the 90s that he never had to stand trial for. So talking with the detectives, they told me how he had multiple, and we found this out too, but that he had multiple fake IDs. The guy even faked his own obituary and put it in the newspaper to establish a new identity. Although then he was named as a groomsman in a wedding a few weeks later, so it didn't really work out for him. But he had multiple aliases, combination of family names. He had known criminal history in multiple states. And according to his daughter, she was interviewed years later after this all came out, and she said, yeah, well, he would travel for work and was gone weeks at a time. That she didn't think about it back then as a child, but looking back, it was kind of odd. And her mom would ask her to call the dad by a different name at times. So we start researching this guy on our end. How is he related to our case? I'm take you back to December 6, 1991. The yogurt shop murders occurs about 11 p.m. We start researching Brashers, figure out what he's doing around this time, where he's at. December 8th, 1991, less than 48 hours after yogurt shop, Robert Brashers is stopped at a Border Patrol checkpoint going westbound on I-10 between El Paso and Las Cruces. It was a random cold stop, just like any time you go through a border checkpoint, except the Border Patrol agent realized something was up. He didn't like the way Mr. Brashers was answering, seemed kind of suspicious, and so he looked into this guy a little further, ran his plate, and it showed to be a stolen car out of Georgia. It had been stolen on November 29th. During this interaction, he was also in possession of a .380 pistol. That .380 pistol was an AMT backup model, that serial number, the A75213. This is the same make and model identified by ballistics as the weapon used in the yogurt shop. He actually did evade from there. He was able to get back into his truck and drive down about a mile, but then he stopped and gave up. We believe he probably threw out any other evidence he may have had from the yogurt shop, possibly a .22, because it was very dark out there. There's no artificial light. So he's charged with auto theft and felon possession. It goes federal. He does about 4 years. However, at some point, the gun is released back to his father, which is not an easy thing to do. You got to jump through a bunch of hoops to get your gun back after a crime. But it is released to his father because Brashers really wanted that gun back. His YSTR has been found in the following 3 places. This is 3 sexual assault kits of those young girls. There are limitations to YSTR. While this guy looks good, we're building a case, there are some limitations. It only looks at markers found on the male chromosome, so if you ever had a female suspect, you're out of luck. It's not necessarily unique to one individual, like autosomal STRs used in CODIS. STRs are passed down paternally. So me and my brother have the same YSTR profile, unless there's some sort of mutation. So the further away you are related, you'll see more mutations. Certain combinations of these alleles are more frequent than others, so you could get several, quote, hits from a database that have no relation to the crime. They're really good at eliminating suspects and donors, but are difficult for a positive ID. It's hard to get 100% or with certainty with just an YSTR. It's a statistical probability of how many people are expected to also have that same Y. In this case, we know Mr. Brashers had a unique Y at 0.1% of the population. So September 15th, we took additional items to DNA Labs International, and we're trying to figure out how to get from we're pretty sure it's him to we know it's him. Now, these items have been previously tested in years past, and while they were screened for male DNA, they were very, very low quant and very fragmented and degraded. So they were preserved. Maybe someday we could do something with this, but we can't today. We would just be wasting the DNA because we don't think we're ever going to be able to get enough DNA for a CODIS upload. There's just not enough quality or quantity to meet the threshold that CODIS requires to search. So you would just be consuming DNA for no reason. So we decided, well, now we've got a different testing strategy. We don't necessarily need to upload to search. We just need enough DNA to compare. And those are 2 different thresholds. So we need enough STR markers to do a direct comparison from our crime scene to Robert Brashers. So we identified some items that could be done, that possibly, and this was going to be it. We were pushing all of our chips on the table with this. This was going to be the last shot effort with some of this DNA. But we were pretty confident with the technology and the circumstances that this was going to be pay dirt. One of the things we retested was Amy's fingernail clippings from the autopsy. They were able to get quite a bit of STR, try to get DNA out of Amy's fingernail clippings, and it was directly compared to Brashers' profile, and it matched so that it's 2.5 million to 1 that it's likely Robert Brashers underneath Amy's fingernails than it is to an unknown individual. September 22nd, DNA from Kentucky murder was directly compared to Brashers, and at this point, he cannot be excluded. Final report is pending. They've got their DNA, but they got to do a little more work on it. But as at this point, it appears to be him, and our ballistics report is still pending. So just a bit about his MO. Because there's questions about how the yogurt shop could be one person with multiple guns. He was known to carry multiple weapons. We have that documented in other cases. He's known to tie his victims, sometimes with their own clothing. He's known to sexually assault young female victims when given the opportunity. He often shot the victim in the head, and in Kentucky we know it was the same gun in similar details to yogurt shop, and now similar DNA. At this point, there's no physical evidence that links Springsteen, Scott, Pierce, or Wellborn to the yogurt shop crime scene. There's no evidence that connects the previous 4 suspects with Robert Eugene Brashers either. The surviving victims of Brashers' violence always reported he was alone when he acted. He never was known to have an accomplice. And we have a documented case, because they survived, where he was able to do a home invasion. He controlled 4 women alone, tied them up, and sexually assaulted one of them in 1997 in Memphis. So that's something he is able to do, is 4. In 1999, after standoff with police, he had 2 guns during then, but he chose actually the lesser powerful one of the 2 to kill himself with. He used an AMT 380 model backup pistol with serial number A75213 that he was stopped with 2 days after yogurt shop. Same gun. Now, I just want to reiterate that this is a combination of technology, good police work from multiple agencies in cooperation, and timing. Because, for example, the Kentucky case, they didn't resubmit their knife and shell casing until last year. So this is something that could not have happened until 2025. And I'm sorry that it took 30, 40 years for us to get here, but we're here now. And, Amy's final moments on this earth were to solve this case for us. It's because of her fighting back. So, thank you.
Thank you, Detective. I'm Dr. Dana Cadavy, Director of Austin Forensic Science, and I would like to start off with expressing my condolences to the families and all of those in our community that have been deeply impacted by this tragic case. I also want to acknowledge the key role that traditional forensic science and objective data have played in this major case development. Austin Forensic Science and Austin Police have been actively working together, sometimes daily and hourly lately, along with dozens of partner agencies, forensic laboratories, and nationally renowned subject matter experts, leveraging this collective expertise and power, combining excellent police work with objective forensic evidence. I am confident in the totality of data generated to date because it has remained consistent. The DNA story never changed. That predominant unknown male Y profile that we first observed in 2009 as a partial profile is consistent with that full unknown male Y profile we saw in 2019. Despite advancements in technologies, despite being run by independent laboratories, by different analysts using different equipment and different procedures, the results were the same. The DNA story never changed. Yet, we still had no ability to identify the contributor of this unknown male profile. It wasn't in any databases that had been searched over the years. It wasn't until very recently when the South Carolina State Lab solved one of their own cold cases and entered their suspect's profile into the database that we had a hit to our unknown male subject. Thanks to the due diligence of South Carolina, we finally had the missing forensic piece, a known suspect and his DNA reference sample. From here, we could do direct comparisons of his reference standard to the samples collected at the crime scene. This was the piece that we needed. With these direct comparisons complete, we now have the data to indicate, with very strong statistical support, that Robert Brashers was indeed the contributor to intimate victim samples collected from the yogurt shop crime scene. Given the totality, the consistency, and the strength of these data, I am confident in the update that we're providing to you today. I want to thank you and introduce District Attorney Jose Garza.
Thank you, Dr. Kadavi. Good morning. My name is Jose Garza, and it is my privilege to serve as the Travis County District Attorney, and I'm so very honored to be with you today. At the Travis County District Attorney's Office, we have never forgotten about Amy, Jennifer, Eliza, and Sarah. Our hearts will always be broken for you. To all of the family and friends who have loved and grieved for Amy, Jennifer, Eliza, and Sarah, we know that there is no way to make right what happened to them. We are committed to supporting you in any way that we can during this time. I also want to take a moment to thank the Austin Police Department and Attorney General's cold case units, along with the forensic and analysts who have worked on this case. As you have heard in great detail, they never gave up. The cold case teams relentlessly followed the facts and the evidence, along with help from law enforcement agencies across the country, and they, all of them collectively, are why we are here today. And we have a responsibility to remember the path that we walked to get here. In October of 1999, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen, Forrest Wellborn, and Maurice Pierce, who were all between the ages of 15 and 17 at the time of the crime, were arrested for the murders. There was no physical evidence tying them to the crime. Mr. Scott confessed after an 18-hour interrogation. Mr. Springsteen confessed after a 5-hour interrogation, and both confessions implicated the other two boys. Both later recanted their confessions and said they were false and coerced. In 2001 and in 2002, Mr. Scott and Mr. Springsteen were convicted of capital murder. Mr. Scott was sentenced to life in prison, and Mr. Springsteen was sentenced to death. Mr. Pierce's case was dismissed in 2003 for lack of evidence, and he was released after spending 3 years incarcerated. The cases of Mr. Scott and Mr. Springsteen were eventually overturned in 2006 and 2007 because of constitutional errors during the course of their trials, and they remained incarcerated until 2009. In 2009, DNA testing found biological evidence that did not match any of the 4 boys, and on the eve of retrial, their cases were dismissed pending further investigation by the Travis County District Attorney's Office. I want to be clear. The District Attorney's Office learned about the results of this investigation less than a week ago, and the families learned about these results even more recently. We are so incredibly grateful for this investigation, and we still have work to do to review the findings of that investigation. I also want to be clear that the Austin Police Department's investigation is ongoing. As we stand here today, there are still investigative steps that are underway. That being said, the overwhelming weight of the evidence points to the guilt of 1 man and to the innocence of 4. The evidence points to the guilt of Robert Eugene Brashers and to the innocence of Maurice Pierce, Michael Scott, Robert Springsteen IV, and Forrest Wellborn. If the conclusions of that investigation are confirmed, the Travis County District Attorney's Office will take responsibility for our role in prosecuting these men, in sending 1 to death row and 1 to serve life in prison. If the conclusions of APD's investigation are confirmed, as it appears that they will be, I will say I am sorry, though I know that that will never be enough. We will take any necessary steps to ensure that they can move forward with their lives. So much time has passed, but it is never too late for justice. And the families of Amy, Jennifer, Eliza, and Sarah so deserve justice. Once the Austin Police Department has completed their investigation and transmitted the results of that investigation to our office, we will work with all of you to pursue justice through our legal system. I cannot imagine how difficult it has been to receive this overwhelming influx of new information in the last several days. Please rest assured that we will keep you informed at every stage about the developments in this case about Robert Brashers. We will work with you to make sure that you have your day in court. Since 2017, Mindy Monford has doggedly pursued justice in this case, from inside the Travis County District Attorney's Office and the Texas Attorney General's Office. Mindy, we are so grateful to you, and I hope you will please welcome Mindy Monford.
Thank you, Mr. Garza. Thank you to Attorney General Ken Paxton, First Assistant Brent Webster, and Deputy AG for Criminal Justice Josh Reno for establishing the statewide cold case and missing persons unit and giving me the opportunity to be standing here today. Their courage and leadership to address this need for resources in Texas shows what can be accomplished if we are willing to break down walls and collaborate for the benefit of victims and their loved ones. I want to recognize the members of the cold case unit that are here today because they didn't stand up earlier. You'll wave. They really work hard to help law enforcement agencies across the state of Texas with their unsolved homicide cases. Also, Brent Dupre, who is the Director of Law Enforcement for the AG's office. I want to say that he's been with me on this journey, starting this unit and also helping with the Austin Police Department investigation. And I don't think he ever turned down a request for lab testing if I said it was yogurt shop. So I want to thank him for that. In 2017, I was called into one of my first meetings as the first assistant district attorney with then Travis County District Attorney Margaret Moore. It was to meet with Bob and Pam Ayers and Sean and Angie Ayers, family of Amy Ayers. She had been tragically murdered in the yogurt shop murders, and I remembered the case well since I'd lived in Austin since 1976 and grown up in Northwest Hills near the yogurt shop. The intent of the meeting was to tell us to never stop looking into the case and please continue the investigation no matter the expense. We assured the heirs that money would never be an object to get to the truth, and DA Moore assigned the case directly to me and explained it would be one of our top priorities. Bob Ayers and I had a little laugh the other day as we both recalled the tears in my eyes as we left the meeting that day. I was trying to think maybe he didn't see me crying that day, but he called me out the other day. I was so incredibly honored and humbled and proud to be entrusted with an important case such as this one. I promised the family that day I would never give up on this case. It would be one of the most memorable moments of my career until this past Friday when we met again with the families and we gave them the news about Robert Brashers. In 2021, with the help and inspiration of Angie and Sean Ayers, and with the backing of Attorney General Ken Paxton, the AG's Cold Case and Missing Persons Unit was created to support law enforcement agencies across the state with their unsolved homicide investigations. And I was given a new opportunity to work on unsolved cases around the state. I remember when Sean and Angie Ayers came to speak in support of the idea of creating a statewide unit. And they commented, the creation of this unit might not help our family, but if it helps other families, then this could be a pretty good thing. Sean and Angie, thanks to your selflessness, you've not only helped other families, but you helped your own. And I bet you didn't think when you said those words that day we'd be standing here. In 2022, our unit began collaborating with the Austin Police Department on the yogurt shop murder case. And I found myself getting to work on this case again. Of course, I never really stopped. Since that time, we've worked hand in hand with APD. I've personally seen the hard work and dedication the department has devoted to this investigation. I realized recently there's been a little documentary series out there, and a lot of people are saying, oh, thank God APD has finally worked this case. As someone who has worked pretty much nonstop on this case with APD from 2017, I want to tell you there can be nothing farther from the truth. I have personally observed the Austin Police Department work on this case nonstop. They have never stopped following leads, testing evidence, and trying to seek the truth. We still have work to do on this case, and we will continue this journey with APD as long as it takes and as long as they will have us. And as a statewide cold case unit, we will continue to investigate potential unsolved cases that might be related to this suspect. I would urge law enforcement and the public to reach out to our office or the Austin Police Department if you believe you have information on Robert Brashers. His crimes involve similar circumstances, as Detective Jackson told you. And that slide he had on the modus operandi is very important. I hope that you will republish that as often as you can. He used ligatures to tie up his victims, often their clothing. He used a firearm, most often a .380 or a .22, with gunshot wounds to the head of his victims. He sexually assaulted his victims, often young girls, and sometimes, as we've seen, he set fire to the crime scenes. If you have information, we'll be posting tip lines for both our office, the cold case unit of the Attorney General's office, and the Austin Police Department. Robert Brashers died in 1999, and if you have any information about him that occurred prior to that time, it could be very helpful. And our tip line, you can remain anonymous. This day is about the families, and so I'm going to turn that over to them now. It's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Mrs. Barbara Wilson, mother of Sarah and Jennifer Harbison.
I'm really excited about being here. It's been a crazy couple of days, and I just really came here to say I'm full of gratitude. It has been so long, and all we ever wanted for this case was the truth. We never wanted anyone to go to jail or be charged with anything that they did not do. Vengeance was never it. It was always the truth. And I'm here to really talk about the police department and how involved and supportive they have been from the very beginning. We have Mike Huckabee, and please keep him in your prayers. His health is bad. So, and him and John Jones, they were the first people that we fell in love with on the force because they told us about what had happened. And starting with those guys 34 years ago, they were been in our lives and our families all of this time. And every officer that I see in Austin that has been there for us and loved us, and what they have done, people don't understand how hard they work. Everybody is concerned for the solving of the case. Everybody was concerned about all of us here because they know the tragedy was so painful and continues to be. But I really just came to say thank you for the Austin Police Department and all the love and support that you have given us over these 34 years. And I thank you for that.
And next up, we will have Sonora Thomas, sister to Eliza Thomas.
10 years ago, my mom died. 10 years ago, my mom died. I went to the cemetery on Hancock to fill out the paperwork. And the clerk behind the desk, when she looked up the location of my mom's plot, paused. And then she said, "I've lived in Austin for so long. Please know that your family has always been in my prayers." I hadn't lived in Austin for 20 years at that point, but it was such a comfort to hear this woman's words without even saying anything to her about who I was. The outpouring of love from strangers because of these tragic circumstances has taught me about the nature of humanity. Living through something like this, you would think that I'd feel worse about humanity, but instead I feel better. When I think about those early days, I think about Nell Myers, Bernalee Carr, from People Against Violent Crimes, coming to our house, taking us out to lunch. They even took me, a 13-year-old girl, clothes shopping. Don and Susan Cox from the Christie Center let my mom sleep on the couch when she was too scared to go home. Then there was the memorial company that donated the headstone, and the Lanier student who played taps at the funeral, and John Jones, who was there from the very beginning, who still answers my phone calls. The million kindnesses that have been extended to me and my family have gotten us to this moment. Some of us. I think of my mom today, and I wish she were here. Our reality doesn't change after today. Our families are still too small, still missing an essential ingredient, and we are lesser for it. We have been robbed of a life with nieces and nephews and grandchildren, and with sisters to grow old with. This sort of mindless violence continues to steal from all of us. I don't yet know how this information is going to change my life, but what I learned about myself in the past 2 days is that my brain was split in two. One part of my brain has been screaming, "What happened to my sister?" And the other part kept repeating, "I will never know, I will die not knowing, and I have to be okay with that." On Saturday, those two parts of my brain started melting into each other. I realized how much energy I had used to keep them separate and to convince myself that I was okay not knowing. A few weeks ago, a reporter asked me, "Do you think this will ever be solved?" And I didn't skip a beat. I said, "I can't think about that. I will lose my mind if I think about that. I have to focus on my work, helping my clients and my groups as a therapist. But now I can have both. I know now what happened, and that does ease my suffering. And I can continue to pass on all the kindnesses that have been shown to me over the decades and hope that I can ease the suffering of others." Thank you so much.
And we'll now hear from Angie and Sean Ayers. Sean is the brother of Amy Ayers, and Angie is the sister-in-law of Amy Ayers.
I'm old school. Thank you for letting us have the chance today to speak. We greatly appreciate it. My name's Sean Ayers. I'm the son of Robert and Pam Ayers, Amy's big brother. I'd like to first thank God for giving us all the strength and perseverance for the last 34 years to finally have a little end to it. At one point, I had given up on God, but He never gave up on me, and I am thankful for that. Thank you for the persons that leaked information to the media. Thank you for the bombardment of texts and calls we got minutes after we found out from a face-to-face meeting with APD. Thanks for being responsible for some of the parents being called by media before they got the chance to have their face-to-face with APD. Thank you for forcing this press conference to be moved up, so we all had to rush to put our thoughts and words into a moment we've been waiting 34 years for. You should know better. This has to stop. Since I had to write this down last night on the drive down here, I apologize now if I leave anybody out. Detective Dan Jackson. To us, he's just Dan. One of the few detectives I've met during this journey that has no ego. A man that looks you in the eye with good or bad news. Hold on, I gotta put these on. A man that does what he says with no excuses. A man that treated the girls, the families, in this case with respect. A man that turned down multiple promotions to stay in the cold case unit and on this case. Please take some promotions now. You deserve it. He did his job, not for credit for himself. He did it for the answers, the justice, and a little peace for the people this case has touched. And boy, did he get it done. Thank you, Dan. Mindy Montfort, last of the Mohicans. Mindy has been there since the beginning, and yes, she told us face to face that she would never stop fighting and never stop helping us. Not surprising, she kept her word. We have laughed and cried together, but she never backed away from the fight and always gave us hope, not with her words, but with her actions. I hope that you have an idea of what you mean to us. Me and my family. The world needs more Mindy Montforts. Thank you, Mindy. Dan and Mindy thought outside the box, made some tough decisions, but they couldn't have done it alone. We still don't know everyone that has been involved this latest update. Thank you to every law enforcement officer from multiple local, state, and federal law enforcement agencies. Thank you to all the labs and their employees. Thank you to all the experts that had a hand in this. The result you see today is when you have an army of people working together to reach a common goal, not for themselves, but for the victims and their families. Thank you to all of you. All right, Dan. And the last one, the spark that lit the fuse, the love of my life, the mother of my children, and a badass of a human being, Angie Ayers. She is the reason I'm standing here at this press conference today. She's the reason this case is not in a box somewhere at APD. I asked for her help, not knowing I was what I was about to witness. With no experience, no idea where to start, what to do, she went to work. She started making phone calls to everyone that would listen, and the ones that didn't listen, she made them. She was a thorn in the side of many detectives, but she eventually gained the respect of all of them. She didn't take no for an answer. She never gave up when it was extremely hard, and she always said she didn't want to let us down. You never let us down. She's not a detective of any kind or legal counsel, but at this point, she could be a damn good one. I'm proud to be called her husband. I can say I never can repay her for what she has done. I'm gonna spend the rest of my life trying. I love you, and thank you. To everyone that's ever sent an encouraging word by card, text, email, or face-to-face, thank you. It means a lot. This day, I was never sure it was going to get here. This chapter will close soon, but we're just getting started. You will see.
Sorry. Thank y'all for allowing me the time to speak today. There's been a great amount of emotion over the past few days that no one can explain unless you've experienced it. And to those that leaked it before all the family members were notified, shame on you. This has never been a story to us, these families. It's always been our lives, and we were forced to share it with the world. And the one day that we were trying to cope with it and take a breath, you took that from us. I hope that you never have to endure the pain that caused. With that said, I've already been introduced, so I'm sorry. I'm Angie Ayers, wife of Amy, who's brother to Sean. Wife of Sean, brother to Amy. My journey started 2 days after this murder. I was actually friends with one of the Harbison's cousins. I did not know from that day forward I would be connected with this case for the rest of my life. When Sean asked me to fight for justice, I said, "How far do you want me to push?" And he said, "As far as you can." That lit a fire in me that I had never experienced in my life. I have been here longer than most investigators involved. I've been here longer than the district attorneys, the prosecutors, and chief of police. I have been told no, to stand down, told to wait, be careful. Be careful for what you ask for, and I'll let you know when it's deemed appropriate. But I've also got yeses. And those yeses helped start a cold case unit at the Attorney General's office. It also has helped make a federal bill for the families and victims. And I say this to all the other family victims out there. Keep going. You will get knocked down, but get back up with a vengeance. Do not take no when your gut is telling you to push. Do not give up. Fight for what is right, and most importantly, don't let them put your case back in a box. To the Austin community, the APD Cold Case Unit, and the hundreds of friends and families here, online, and watching, thank you for not forgetting the girls. Your cards and your messages have never gone unread, and they are a comfort to have. To all the people that have reached out, to those that have stood by us to give us advice and a shoulder to lean on when we needed it, thank you. To the families of the cold case throughout the country, I hope you can find the right people who are willing to put their heart and soul in your case and willing to fight for you and with you. I hope that you can build a team of law enforcement, geneticists, genealogists, private investigators, forensic experts, DNA experts, whoever and whatever. Whatever it takes to find the proof that you need in order to solve your case, as we did for the girls. There have been so many detectives that have come and gone over the years, but I guess now Dan, you will be our favorite. He came in eager to work for the girls and work with the team. He was warned against how intense and passionate I was in order to help this case. He never wavered. He was willing to put all of his ego aside and do what was right for the girls. He followed the evidence and undoubtedly invested his heart and soul into fighting for justice. He and his team worked diligently to find the hidden puzzle pieces that we needed. Dan, what you have done for Sarah, Jennifer, Eliza, and Amy, there is absolutely no way that we can find the words. There is not a proper way to show our gratitude. All I can say right now is thank you. The other person in this room, I'm going to make this. She has been by our side the majority of the time. She has set the bar for cold case units and missing persons units in Texas, and together we will be forming a foundation to further advance law enforcement agencies and cold cases around the country. Mindy Montford, thank you. From our first meeting, she said she would never give up and would fight with us and would be there until she could deliver the news that the girls and the families deserved, and she did it. She has withstood the ups and the downs, the twists and turns, and the exhausted amount of text, emails, phone calls that I have sent throughout the years. Thank you for being a woman of your word. There is nothing that we can do to repay you for what you and all of the team has done for us. This has given so much hope to other families across the country. I hope that you hear me. To law enforcement far and near, please hear this. Open the cold case boxes, please. Put the evidence in the databases. Run the rape kits. Do not wait. Do it today. You could help ease someone's pain today. With the technology, we should be solving more cases. Let's quit letting murderers and habitual criminals out of prison. The justice system has failed the girls numerous times over the decades. This system has got to change. We have got to do better for the victims. I would like to ask President Trump for a conversation to help fix this broken system. I believe that you have the ability to help change it. To the families of the girls, to my in-laws, thank you for trusting me with this task. I'm sorry that it took so long. I hope that this helps heal part of your broken heart. The pain that you have endured over the decades can never be healed, but I hope you can stop asking who did this to your girls. To my son, to my daughter, I'm sorry that you were thrown into this. I'm sorry for all the intense moments, all the meetings and frustrations you have witnessed and had to be a part of. But I hope that you can see that your aunt and her friends were loved, and it was all worth it. To my husband, I'm sorry. I have seen you suffer in more ways than people will ever know. You've always been the strong and silent one, but sometimes in the silence, it's the one who's suffering the most. I am glad I was able to keep my word. I was able to help you and our family find justice. I was never going to give up. And lastly, to my sister-in-law, Amy Ayers, I am so honored to have fought next to you. But you can rest easy now, sister. I've got it from here. I will continue your fight to help other victims. Thank you.
This case has always been defined by its victims, and the enduring pain is especially clear today. I want to say how much I appreciate the grace of all of the families over the years. You move me. I know you move everyone in our earshot. So God bless you. I also want to say again, before we go to questions, I want to say from the bottom of my heart, on behalf of the families and on behalf of the people of this city and those that care about justice, thank you to those who have brought us to this point. We've treated today almost like we're in church, but I think it is appropriate for us to ask you to stand and recognize you for the valiant work that you've done on our behalf. Mindy, doctor, have the doctor stand up too. And on behalf of the City of Austin, I also want to say thank you to all of the law enforcement agencies and groups that have been helpful in this. The detective called you out and by name, and you humbly and kind of stayed in the background, but we deeply appreciate what you've done because you've created hope. All of you have created hope. And today I am very hopeful. My hopefulness is that we can turn a page as a community and hopefully a final page. The final page on a horror that marked a very different time in Austin's history. I believe we can take heart in our growth and our progress and our strength as the city, and we can go to sleep knowing that while the threat of this kind of evil may never pass in this world, we are far, far better able to prevent it before it happens and solve it when it does. The yogurt shop murders will always be part of Austin's history. The pain from that night and its aftermath will never go away. But with the knowledge we have now, we can share some peace. God bless Amy, Jennifer, Sarah, and Eliza. They will always be a part of our city's identity. God bless their families, and God bless Austin. We'll now be happy to answer some questions. I'll turn it over to you.
It's not. Okay, doesn't want to. There we go. All right, everybody, thank you. Thank you. We'll get started in just a second, opening the floor. I do want to remind everybody to please raise your hands and wait for me to call on you. If I don't know your name, I'll do my best to describe you and make eye contact as well. Please state your name and the media outlet you're with. There are microphones in the room that should capture your voices. And I'll do my best to get to everybody. Yes, Betty.
Sure. At this point, there is no evidence that he had an accomplice. All of his crimes that we know of, he was alone in all of them, and he was able to accomplish things alone similar to what he did in Yogurt Shop, but in other crimes as well. So we have no evidence at this point that he had somebody with him.
Yes, Bree?